and welcome to How to Land Your First Cybersecurity Job, a webinar presented by Western Governors University. Today's conversation with esteemed WGU alumni, faculty, and leaders will give you great advice and resources on landing your first cybersecurity job. A few housekeeping details before we get started. All of the attendees have been muted upon entry to the webinar, and your cameras are deactivated except for those who are panelists. Our panel will try to answer questions that were pre-submitted at registration, but we will not be able to take questions from the chat. Today's session is being recorded and will be sent to all of the registrants along with resources slides. There will be a survey link at the end of the session and sent out to you afterwards. And we ask that you please fill that out so we can provide other webinar topics of interest to you. It will really help us know what would be of importance to you as we plan important and valued webinars to share with you. It is now my honor to introduce Paul Bingham, Vice President and Dean of the Western Governors University College of Information Technology. Paul joined WGU in 2019 after 24 years as an FBI agent, conducting and managing domestic and international investigations. He's an accomplished instructor and a featured presenter in topics including cybersecurity and incident response. Paul holds cybersecurity certifications including the CISSP, GCIH, GSEC, and GPEN. He has earned a Master of Accountancy and a Bachelor of Science in Accounting from Brigham Young University. Paul, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Rebecca, and welcome everybody who's joined us today. I think in contrast to all of our participants, I'm the only guy not on the East Coast. I should say all of our panelist participants, and what I wouldn't give for first a New York bagel followed by a slice of New York pizza. Maybe one of you could send me that when we're done. I'd like to welcome our panelists who are with us today. First, we have Jolene Van Nostrand, who's an internal risk management analyst or internal risk mitigation analyst from National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, or NOAA. Welcome, Jolene. Second, yeah, sure. Second, we have Justin Weeks, VP of Cybersecurity and Compliance at Align Technology Solutions. Justin, welcome.
Thank you.
This would be when everybody's walking on stage and your walk-on music is going. Rashawn Green is next, Principal Security Service Engineering at Microsoft. Rashawn, welcome. Glad you're with us tonight. And finally, the other Paul, or as I said when we were getting ready, the original Paul, Director of Intelligence Services at Dragos. Paul, welcome, and thanks for joining us tonight.
Thanks very much.
Sure. So let's start with Rashawn and Paul with the first question. By the way, to each of our panelists, since we're talking about landing that first cybersecurity role, prior to answering your first question, when it's your turn, I'd love for you to share with us what your first cybersecurity job was, and then proceed with whatever question you're answering. So for the first question, again, since we're talking about landing that first cybersecurity job, we're going to just talk about the jobs themselves. Then we'll get on to qualifications and how to get your foot in the door. But for this first question, the cybersecurity field is so broad and is filled with so many opportunities. What are some of the entry-level positions that some of our attendees should be looking for, and some reasonable expectations of the kind of work that those positions would have? Rashawn, how about you first?
Hi, Paul. I'm Rashawn Green. My first role in cybersecurity was on the help desk, working for Johns Hopkins University Applied Physics Lab. Some of you guys may have recently seen them on the news for the DART mission with NASA. The cybersecurity field is, of course, broad, like you mentioned, and filled with tons of opportunities. Starting out on the help desk allowed me to gain entry into the cybersecurity field, see a broad range of issues, because that's the central point of pretty much everything that comes through whatever organization, or it's going to start at the help desk with the ticket more than likely. Tier 1 troubleshooting happens here. So this could range from password resets, account lockouts, account creation, standard application and software troubleshooting. Normally, with what will happen with the help desk tech will do base level tier 1 troubleshooting, which in most incidents, there's usually an SOP, a guide that you would follow from there. And with that, the incident, you would do your best effort to follow that guide. And if you are outside of your troubleshooting realm, that will go on to the next tier. Help desk roles, can also allow the individual, again, to make connections and, work their connections from that particular point as well, too. So, yeah.
Great answer, great examples. And you lived it, starting at the help desk and then progressing on through a bunch of other different roles. Thanks for that, Rashawn. Paul, how about you? First job, and then what do you think? Reasonable expectations for the kinds of jobs somebody might find themselves in as a first role in cybersecurity.
Sure. So my first foray into the cybersecurity world was really through the military. I was active duty U.S. Navy as a cryptologic technician. So we did a lot of different things, network analysis and looking at some of those things. This is actually late 2000s, like 2007, 2008. So this is kind of before like the cybersecurity, cyber threat intelligence industry really took off. But that was kind of my first foray into that world. And as far as some of the things that you should really be looking for is like in terms of like entry level roles, beginner roles, just kind of trying to get your foot in the door, get some foundational elements underneath you. In my mind, I think going to an organization that has some sort of a security operations center, a SOC, some of the other things that we've talked about, like a managed detection and response teams, which can be components of a SOC, but you get in there, you get a lot of experience in the security world. You see, different tools and techniques that adversaries are using, and how, there are a lot of commercially available tools and resources at your disposal, how they work, how you can use those things to better defend your network and better defend your client's network if you're in more of a service provider environment. And you get experience and visibility into incident response, incident handling, malware analysis, net flow analysis. So you can really hone a lot of your technical skills there. But the one thing that I really like about working in a SOC is you get a lot of opportunities to move into leadership roles. And you also get some opportunity to kind of get some of that, customer engagement, business level experience, which in my career has been incredibly helpful.
Yeah, thanks. That's a great point, and great to hear two different starting points from a couple of guys who have been really successful in cybersecurity throughout their careers. And by the way, Paul, thanks for your service in our military. I pulled up while you were just talking, I pulled the list up because I didn't want to leave one out, but the NICE Workforce Framework, or National Initiative for Cybersecurity Education, breaks down all of the different roles in cybersecurity. And really it is so vast, including roles in investigation, collecting and operating, protecting and defending, analyzing, operating and maintaining, overseeing and governing, and securely provisioning. Something that I know in your time in the military, that's a big concern for some of our military and government folks. So thanks for getting us started with those questions. Rashawn, I think we'll stick with you with our second question, as well as we'll pull Jillian in on this one. You and Paul gave us a great idea of the kinds of jobs that we could expect as entry-level positions. Following up on that, what are your tips for getting your foot in the door? And actually, I think we'll go with Jillian first. And Jillian, tell us about your first cybersecurity role.
Thank you. I am actually currently in my first cybersecurity role. I was hired through the Cybersecurity Talent Initiative, which is part of the Partnership for Public Service, fresh out of graduating from WGU with my BS in cybersecurity. And I work over at NOAA as an internal risk mitigation analyst. And a lot of what I do is program management. So if you're enrolled, pay attention to that Project Plus class. It's incredibly applicable to your work roles. The duties that you'll have in your positions. But we're building an internal risk mitigation program, which is basically like an insider threat program.
Yeah, that's great. And so I was aware that this is your first position and super excited for you. What do you think helped you get your foot in the door with this? I know you mentioned the program that you joined through, but still there was a lot of competition for that job. So what do you think? Or also, in addition to that, what have you seen with other people who are joining the team?
I think networking is a really big thing, having additional skills, because the technical skills are important, but those are things you can pick up. You also need to have really good communication skills, emotional intelligence, being able to break down complex ideas into terms that people can understand, even if they're not technical. That goes a really long way, because a lot of what you do in cybersecurity is customer experience. And so you're going to have a lot of opportunities to showcase those skills if you can transfer those over. And then LinkedIn is a fabulous resource for networking. If you're a WGU student, the Cybersecurity Club is an incredible resource. They do a lot of capture the flags, which are competitions to help you develop those technical skills even further. And then you can take those skills and showcase them. Like the National Cyber League does a whole scouting report, so it'll break down the different skills you showcased and how well you did compared to the other competitors. And that can help you as a conversation point within an interview or as you're speaking and networking with people to kind of get them interested in what you might be able to bring to the table.
Great advice, Jolene. Thank you so much. Rashawn, what do you think? You have an opportunity to see a lot of aspiring people that are entering the cybersecurity field. What tips do you have for getting your foot in the door for that first job?
Well, definitely getting your foot in the door and your first job can consist of like, applying for contract roles through a staffing agency. That's actually how I got my first start, was applying for a contract to hire role via the staffing agency who ultimately ended up sponsoring me for my security clearance. And that was all based upon the certifications that I obtained through WGU prior to graduating. Tech events, conferences, and believe it or not, LinkedIn has been a tremendous resource. My last two roles, including the one that I have today, I got from recruiters reaching out to me via LinkedIn. Microsoft, the company that I work for, has a program that is called Microsoft Leap, which is an entry-level program that the company has started to find new talent in unconventional ways. It's a 16-week cohort that is offered a few times a year. You can find more information out by going to microsoft.com/leap. And we were talking earlier in the call about military work as well. So Microsoft also has Microsoft Software and Systems Academy, where the company provides technical training for transitioning service members and veterans. So that's an opportunity as well. This actually works, and it's a really good program. To work for me today, I hired from that program itself.
Oh, that's awesome advice. And thanks for the tips on opportunities right now that are out there that can help people get their foot in the door. We have a couple more minutes with this question. Justin, I'd like to toss it over to you. I don't think we've heard from you yet. And so before you answer, we need to hear what your first job was in cybersecurity. And then what are your tips on helping somebody get their foot in the door for that first job?
Absolutely, and thank you again. So, I guess the first job I had in cybersecurity was actually a field technician. I would go out to clients' sites, help them with a variety of technological needs, and really that gave me not only the technical experience, but really an understanding of how businesses use and leverage technology to be successful in their end goals. Something that I really recommend to people most of the time in order to get some experience is to go with other companies like a managed service provider. Often they have a tremendous amount of entry-level roles available, such as help desk, field technicians, and many others, and really gain that experience, understand how businesses operate, and gain those technical skills and be able to demonstrate them. And more importantly, there's a tremendous amount of room for growth where you can eventually possibly even move into security roles directly with the same company. It really is an interesting industry that many people don't know about, and that's one way to gain experience.
Oh, such great tips from everybody. I want to make sure as well that all the attendees can see the chat. I think they can, but could somebody just confirm, yes, I can see the chat, because there's some additional information being shared by our, oh, perfect. Perfect. Yes, yes, yes. Way to go. some great information being shared from our panelists as well. And Paul, I think we're going to come full circle. We have time for you to share your tips as well on getting your foot in the door for that first job.
Sure. I think a few folks mentioned internships. I'm such a huge fan of internships in the security community, just because there's so much work that needs to be done. And, you know, we always talk about how like there's such a wide, gap in talent in the security industry at large. And that really lends itself to why internships are so popular within our industry. I can tell everybody full stop that I've hired interns directly from their internship, even before they graduated college, just because they were such a great culture fit and they just really picked up the work really well. So it is possible to go into an internship over the summer and over 3 months. That's your opportunity. So, I mean, a resume is great. If you have a really great resume, that's one thing. But if you actually have the opportunity to go and put to sit in the seat and work side by side with people that have been doing the job for a long time, and they give you a vote of confidence, that is the best way to get your foot in the door and to really show that you're a good culture fit and you're a good team fit, and that ultimately that's going to lead to some sort of a job offer, some sort of a formal job offer.
Yeah, thanks for highlighting internships. Really, I think that rounds out all the great answers for how to get our foot in the door. And as I listened to all of your answers, I think I would kind of categorize, if I took all of your answers, put them into maybe three categories. We heard about having the right skills, and that either is learned through experience or having the experience. The other is, a couple of you mentioned your degrees that you got. And then the last one was, a couple of you mentioned certifications that you got that you think maybe kind of helped you get your foot in the door. And so looking at those three buckets of certifications, a degree, and experience, I'd like to base our next question just on the experience aspect. We're talking about entry-level jobs, and so some of us may not have actual work experience in a security role. So let's start with you, Paul, since you were last on the last question. We'll go first with you on this one. What tips can you share for people to gain experience without actual work experience?
Yeah, so some of the ways that I have seen people really kind of get some experience without actually having like on the job experience, are doing like independent research. There are several colleagues of mine that do independent blogs and security focused blogs, and they do independent research largely using open source intelligence. There are a lot of freely available tools and resources. So like, even though if you want all of the great work or the great data that you can get through something like a VirusTotal, there are still free options with VirusTotal that you can get some decent data out of. And there are numerous amounts of security blogs. I know several people that kind of set up their own darknet research lab capability. That is a really interesting opportunity to kind of hone in and get some visibility into that part of the threat intelligence ecosystem. Now, granted, I'm looking at it from the threat intelligence perspective, so obviously there are a lot of other ways that you can gain experience in this, but like just doing that independent research, so that way when you go into an interview, you have actual tangible work that you've done that shows that a little something about doing the research, that you can put some coherent thoughts together and provide whoever you're interviewing with a more uh, a more tangible product as to what you're actually able to do. So it's actually giving some teeth to your academic experience.
Yeah, great ideas on researching, and even for those of us who are in the profession, the blogs or some of the email distribution lists are so valuable because we see our little piece of the world, and yet so valuable to understand what's really going on out there in the rest of the world that may not be immediately affecting us. Justin, let's jump over to you. What do you think about tips that that you can share for people to gain experience without actual work experience?
One tip I always like to give people is make sure you have some type of home lab. There's many diverse sets of skills that will make you successful in cybersecurity. Not only just the technical skills, but the soft skills. But on the technical side, if you look at like system administration abilities, the ability to program, the ability to understand the operating systems that you're going to be working on, really test those out in a home lab. Really get to know them, how they work, how everything gets put together. That way, when you get involved, you can get involved into many different tasks within the industry. Another thing too is if you are into programming, for example, go out there, start posting some GitHub projects. If you're into the system administration side, make a how-to, post it on GitHub, share it on Twitter, do all those great things, put on LinkedIn if you think it's interesting, make a blog. Really show employers that not only do you have the theoretical knowledge that you learned maybe from certifications, but you're able to apply that in interesting ways that they may not have thought of or that the industry may need. So definitely do those types of things.
Those are all great tips. And I sound like an old guy when I say nowadays, but nowadays with virtual machines, you could set up really complicated labs in your home, without having actual devices on most of them. And it's really such a great benefit. I've also heard, speaking of virtual machines and labs, I've also heard that sometimes people sell themselves short on their resume because they think, well, I haven't actually had a job doing this. But while I was pursuing my degree, say a great cybersecurity degree at WGU, for example, I had opportunity to work through these various exercises in a lab environment, or I participated as the shout out for the Cyber Club earlier. I participated in a competition or in some try hack me or hack the box experiences while I was in school. I think I started this by saying I think people sell themselves short on their resumes because they don't capture that experience. Is it fair to say, Justin, that when people have done these things, even though they were in a lab environment, that really is a pretty close approximation of real world scenarios, and they should share that on their resume? What do you think?
Absolutely. So the real world scenarios, it may not be directly related, but the skills you gain in that absolutely will be relevant to the position you need, especially those capture the flag competitions. You should really just put yourself out there, hop in one and learn some stuff. You may not make it to the top of the leaderboard, the first 10 spots, but the experience you gain and the technical skills and the way of thinking and the patterns of thinking that are needed to be successful are definitely there. So I absolutely agree with all those things.
Oh, yeah, great. Jilene, I'd like to come to you as we continue talking about this question. You're in your first role, and you mentioned a couple of those things that you experienced as you pursued your degree at WGU. I'm curious, did you put those on your resume? If so, how? And if not, did they come up during the interview process?
I did have them under my education for clubs and activities. I listed some of the CTFs I did that I thought would be more well-known or impactful. It did come up in a couple of my interviews, mostly because I brought it up, but it's good to be able to show that you're pursuing those things, that you're investing that time in yourself and your development. I would add that in addition to those, and I'm going to keep harping on this, in addition to those technical skills, to keep developing your leadership skills and find ways to demonstrate those as well. Because that's a huge part of what employers are looking for. There's a resource I think that's going to go out with the slides that was from NACE some research body that was looking at what employers are looking for, and the top 3 gaps that they had identified were communication. I should know this. Communication was a big one, leadership, and problem solving. And so I think if you can also demonstrate those and just show that you're a really robust person, that you work well with others, that your teamwork is there, that you can collaborate effectively, that you can communicate effectively, those are also really important skills to highlight and showcase.
That's a great point. And you nailed it. Experience isn't just technical hacking experience. It's all of the above and what makes you a well-rounded and valuable employee. I appreciate you for sharing that. And finally, Rashawn, we're gonna ask you the same question. As you sit and review resumes, what is it that you look for, or what are great examples that you've seen of people demonstrating experience even before they have the on-the-job experience that they'll get with that first role?
Some of the things I've seen is, like one of the other panelists mentioned as well, starting your own lab, and then being able to talk to those things in the um, interview questions. So, for example, if I ask you, in your lab, when what is the most your lab? You take me through a scenario, then you say, okay, well, this is the situation, this is the task, this is the action, this is the resolution. You're walking through the STAR method interview process, and that's one of the things that people, when you're doing your technical interviews, you need to make sure that you're able to walk through that interview phase and explain the scenario to the person so you get to the end resolution and we're able to understand what you did, because you have a certain amount of time to be able to prove your skills to someone in an interview. So
Yeah, great point. I have been through interviews and I've spoken to colleagues who have performed interviews for technical positions, and the interview consists of a whiteboard and a dry erase marker. And the question is, X, Y, or Z just happened. Document or draw out how you would respond to this. So yeah, great to be able to call upon that experience, even if it was in your home lab, even if it was Try Hack Me or Hack the Box or some other competition. Those are real world scenarios. You just weren't at the time getting paid to do them. And thankfully, in some cases, nobody's business was going down the tubes if we were too slow in figuring out what the problem was. Great. Thanks all of you for sharing your answers on that. Let's move to our next question. And I think, Jolene, we'll start with you. The question kind of follows this, and I want to start with you. It follows the experience question, but it extends a little farther. And I think you already gave us a little bit of that answer, which is experience is not limited to technical skills, but there are communication skills and other things that make you stand or help you stand out from the competition. So I guess, even though you've already provided some of that answer, in addition to experience, what else can job candidates add to their resume to help them stand out from the competition?
I would say the biggest key is to remember that cybersecurity is people, processes, and technology. And so if you can bring all three of those pillars together and demonstrate your skills and your competencies in all three of those pillars, that sets you apart from other candidates who maybe are good technically, but maybe they don't have the speaking skills. They're not going to be able to engage with your stakeholders. Or someone who maybe has people skills but is completely clueless on the technology. If you can demonstrate that you have all three of those, then I think you've got a leg ahead because you're more robust. You can be put into different positions. You won't get stuck in just a narrow niche. You'll be able to expand your skill set and the breadth of your knowledge.
Awesome, thank you. Justin, how about you? What else, in addition to experience, what can people add to their resume to help them stand out from the competition?
I also just want to mention the soft skills again. It's so important. The technical skills, you can learn them, they can be trained, but a hiring manager is really looking at those soft skills. With that said, though, technical skills and hard skills are also very important if you can gain some. And one way to demonstrate that, especially on a resume, is through certifications, as an example. Now, I'm not saying that a certification or a degree is absolutely necessary in our industry. It's not, but they are very good signs to a hiring manager that you are taking an interest in yourself and your own personal development. Some certifications that I actually recommend there are the traditional ones you may all be familiar with already, but A plus, Net plus, Security plus, CCNA, things of that nature. I'm also a big fan of maybe a little more advanced certifications, but those advanced certifications such as OSCP, there have been many people who are entry level into the industry who have successfully completed such certifications. And if you're able to do those certifications, it is a sign that not only can you possibly very likely do the job, you also have a lot of the theoretical knowledge in the background to be able to understand the changing situations and adapting situations that you're going to have. Specific hard skills that I would recommend, programming, cloud architectures, server administrations. If you have those, if you have Linux skills, for example, and you really just like Linux because you've been building web servers and websites for your friends and things of that nature, Linux skills are great, very much in need. Also, if you just have Windows Server administration skills that you picked up somewhere, also really great. And all these can be picked up in a home lab, and not a very advanced home lab. I think you said already, like virtual machines. Spin up some virtual machines, get started, and have a good time. Make sure you put that on your resume. A good indicator of success from a hiring manager's perspective is showing a history, a diverse set of history in different roles, not necessarily related to cybersecurity, as well as the ability to have a home lab, great indicator of success, and then those certifications as well. One thing I will caution everybody with, though, especially in relation to certifications, is don't just do the certification to get the certification. Really internalize the information you're learning, because it's very, very easy to tell when a candidate has just memorized a bunch of facts and really hasn't tried to develop the understanding of the topics on the exams.
Yeah, thanks. I know there's often a lively debate on the value of certifications, and yet each of us have a fairly lengthy list of certifications that we can throw on our resume. So we all clearly have seen that there's some value in it. But that last point of being able to just memorize and then regurgitate certain points to pass the test, even the certification providers, your CompTIA, your ISC squared, your offensive security, well, OSCP that you mentioned, which is kind of the granddaddy of applied knowledge, all of them seem to be moving more towards application of knowledge, some kind of a hands-on activity that's more than being able to just recite back some list of facts. I'm happy to see it moving in that direction, with the ability or the requirement to be able to demonstrate some of that knowledge through application. Let's see, we do have a couple minutes left that we can spend on this, and I'm glad you mentioned certifications. You mentioned the CompTIA suite, A+, Network Plus, Security Plus, and Paul, you come from a military background. A lot of people are familiar with the DoD 8570 or 8140 schedule of positions and certifications that are required for someone to qualify for one of those positions. My recollection is that Security Plus is kind of that foundational entry-level certification that gets one started on that 8570 or 8140 kind of progression of positions. What are your thoughts on it?
Apply that in interesting ways. 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 Apply.
I was going to try and mute you, Paul. You're on a loop back for some reason.
Interesting ways. Apply that in interesting ways. Apply that in interesting
Paul,
ways.
if Paul
Apply that
can
in
hear
interesting
me,
ways. Apply that
you
in
might need
interesting.
to log out and log back in. I don't know how else to deal with this. Rashawn, let's jump to you. I saw you nodding your head when we brought up those foundational certs. What feedback do you have on that?
Yeah, 8570 is what I originally modeled my career on, coming out from, while I was at WGU. And I pretty much used the Security Plus as that, and that was entry level. And I know in most cybersecurity jobs as well too, that's usually the entry level one that they would want people to have. I know WGU offers certified ethical hacker as well too. So yeah, that's those two that I can think of off the top of my head. I know in the software world, companies like Microsoft, Google, Meta, and so on, they utilize leak code as a way to test their candidates as well too. So that's a good area as well.
Great, thanks for bringing those up as well. I appreciate that. Now I've seen this in the chat, a little bit of a discussion about security clearances. because a large number of opportunities are with either government contractors or like Paul, who was actually with the military in the Department of Defense. Most of those roles require some kind of a government clearance. And as was pointed out in the chat, not every cybersecurity role requires a government clearance, but those with government contractors or with the government agencies themselves often do. Because of that, if somebody doesn't already have a clearance, they will likely partner up with either a contracting agency or a temp agency, like Rashawn shared that he did early on in his career, or some of the contractors who will sponsor job candidates to obtain a clearance. With that in mind, and again, a reminder that not every cybersecurity job requires a clearance, but for those that do, what advice do you have for people who think they may be seeking a clearance in the future? Jolene, let's start with you.
Thank you. I had a quick note. I'm going to circle back around to this, but with the resume writing, when you're building your resume, don't just put that I did this thing. When you're writing it, make sure you've got your action and then your impact. So don't just say I had a home lab. Put the impact of what you like. Why was this impactful? If you're speaking to your other skills like leadership or customer service, have some metrics in there, have some way that this is a measurable value add, so that as you take that out, you can say, this is why it matters. This is how I can help bring value to your program or your project. And this is how I've had, like, just sell yourself. So don't just say, I did this thing, they're yawning, everybody does this thing. Why did your thing matter? So just that little note I wanted to insert there, sorry.
Hey, no, thanks, and I'm glad you did, because I'm actually going to insert something on top of your insert, which is for those folks who are joining us who are either WGU students or alumni, or for those who may be in the future WGU students and alumni, the WGU Career Services Department has outstanding help in this regard, both with resume reviews as well as mock job interviews. And so the points that you just made are perfect. And by the way, for all students and alumni, that's a free resource with our Career Services Department. So, all right, back to the question on security clearances. I think I might need one in the future. What tips do you have for me now?
My biggest tips are to, if you use any recreational drugs, stop. Because that's not going to be compatible with federal employment. Make sure you're paying your bills, be responsible. If you have ties to foreign governments, be aware that that's going to slow down your processing. Be patient, know that it does take quite a while, and there's a backlog right now, and depending on the security level, it can take up to a couple of years, and so you might be in a trial or a temporary type position that doesn't require your clearance while they wait for that to get adjudicated. Don't think that it's something that like you have to be worried about. It's just, it takes a while. COVID slowed everything down. But it is something to be mindful of. So if you have your eye on a particular role that's hiring right now and you don't have your clearance, understand that it's going to be difficult to qualify for that immediately, but keep working towards it. Look for pathways that will help you with sponsorship. And again, the Cybersecurity Talent Initiative is a fantastic opportunity, because you don't need experience for that. They're taking fresh college grads or people who will be graduating soon. The application period's open right now, for a little plug for CTI. But they will sponsor your clearance. You get placed in a government agency. You've got a 2-year position doing that. And so that helps you get with the experience piece. It helps you with the clearance piece. And then you start building a network of people that you know, and building your name and your reputation and your brand. And then that'll help you a lot with your moving on to your next position. But yeah, so just, make good decisions. Don't do things that look like you're a risk, or that will indicate that you're a risk. That's really the biggest things that I can think of.
Yeah, great advice. Justin, what do you have to add to that?
Additional things I'd add to that is really stay out of trouble. Don't get in trouble with law. Don't get in trouble with drug usage. Don't get really in trouble with your finances. So all those things aren't deal breakers, though. So if you've had some mistakes in the past, everybody's had them. They're not looking for Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts. They're looking for people who are real people who aren't at risk of being currently compromised by our foreign adversaries. So that's the most important thing to really understand there. And once again, be honest. If you've had some hiccups in the past, you really, really want to be honest. Not only is that important just for your security clearances, that's really important just in our industry. We're very much an industry based upon trust, and trust is a foundational element of what we deal with. Other things to understand is if you're not a U.S. citizen, if you can't get a clearance for some reason, there are still ways to support the mission of our government and the organizations. There are public trust positions that may be available to you. And there's also positions available for those who are maybe not U.S. citizens, but maybe are U.S. persons and not foreign nationals. So really focus on those. But honesty, honesty, honesty. Be clear, be upfront, don't hide anything. And really, that's the most important thing.
Yeah, thanks, Justin. Paul, are you back with us?
Apply that in interesting ways. Apply that in interesting ways.
Oh my
Apply
gosh.
that in interesting ways. Apply that in interesting ways. Apply that in interesting.
Darn. But it is so interesting, and the interesting ways. I know you have great stuff to say, and I see that you're putting it in the chat. Somehow you're on a loop back that just says apply that in interesting ways over and over. So I'm sorry, if we can figure out how to fix that, we'll bring you back in a minute. Rashawn, anything to add on future security clearances?
You know, one of the things that I would mention here, keeping good records as well too, as far as places that you've lived at, people that you know, and as Justin mentioned as well, honesty is everything. The government is going to look at you as a whole person. They're not going to look at you as just one mistake that you may have made. And just like you mentioned as well too, there's public trust positions. There's also secret trust, and so there's top secret. So you can do multiple different things. There's options there as well too. So don't limit yourself. But be realistic as well too. If you know you had a drug use or criminal background, then yeah, you may want to look into doing something different.
Yeah, thank you, Rashawn. I think mine actually may have just expired, but for 25 years, I had a top secret SCI clearance, and everything you all said is so right on. It is not just illegal activity, it's financial activities and making sure that you're paying your bills on time. Honesty, honesty, honesty. Some of us had clearances that required polygraphs, and those don't go so well when you have not been honest on your application, and then you're hooked up to a machine and the sweats start coming. So such great advice. The other thing, Jolene, you mentioned it, international travel, overseas jobs or residences that you may have had, and even some of your international contacts, people that you keep close associations with who are overseas. Rashawn, your point of having those documented so that they're easy to produce and provide when you apply for these. Such great tips. Thanks for providing all of those. And I think that brings us to our last question. We've talked so much about what's that first job look like? How do we get our foot in the door? How do we gain experience before we have actual job experience? What about certifications, our degrees, how they help us, what other skills we need to demonstrate, and potentially what we need to do to prepare for a security clearance. So assuming that all of that may have happened, I'd like to just ask each of you for some thoughts on progressing from that first job and moving up from that entry-level position toward other jobs that help us get closer to our professional goals. Almost each of you has progressed from your first position, and so I'm just interested in what your advice is on that. And Rashawn, I think we'll start with you this time.
Well, thank you, Paul. Networking is a great resource. I've learned that if there is any happy hour after our events, if you have the opportunity to attend, to meet, you have the opportunity to attend, definitely go. You'll have a chance to meet great people, market yourself there as well. I was able to branch out of my first role at the help desk because I had my certifications in my email signature. It happened to catch the attention of my manager at the time, and then someone who I was working on an incident for actually. And um, I also did a lot of volunteering and shadowing with other teams within the company as well too. This helped me to, test drive the role, for example, find out if it's something that I actually wanted to do, and then of course, without committing to the role, of course. It also familiarized me with the team, and the team ultimately will remember who you are as well too from that as well. So definitely, if I have to summarize it, networking, being open to new opportunities, and just pretty much putting yourself out there, marketing yourself as much as possible.
Yeah, thank you so much. And if I recall correctly, you mentioned when we were talking about that first job, you also employed a strategy of including your certifications in your email signature. Is that right?
Yep, I learned that from WGU Career Services. Actually, when I was a student at that time working on my master's program. So, yeah.
Yeah, thanks. All right, Paul, we're coming back to you. I think you're back on audio by phone. Let's see how it works. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Oh man, the loop back is done. Although there may be an opportunity for a TikTok video. It was pretty catchy.
I would hope not. TikTok's a nefarious and malicious app. I do not recommend.
Okay. Well, what are your tips for you've been really successful. You started in the military and you've moved through various roles. What are your tips for moving on from that first position?
Um, you know, I will tell you that I think one of the biggest things that helped me is learning the business. Learning, being willing to just kind of volunteer and take on new projects and new stretch goals. So it's just like a quick anecdote. Last week, I did another panel discussion with the National Renewable Energies Laboratory. And what I did was a discussion around cyber threat intelligence, cyber threats, and the attack landscape impacting wind energy systems. Now, I will be totally honest with everybody here. I knew exactly this much about wind energy systems 60 days ago, but I recognized that it was a really cool opportunity for me to learn, about a new area that I didn't know much about, and to kind of, stretch out some public speaking opportunities, get comfortable talking about, pretty complex threats and whatnot, and making it relevant to a different audience. So I think that is a really a great thing to take on in this industry, is to be willing and ready to take on new opportunities, take on some of those stretch goals that maybe kind of push you out of your comfort zone a little bit. And I highly, highly recommend getting, integrated with sales and customer success at some point in your career, because they're the ones that are paying for what you have to offer. And it's not just enough to go into a circumstance and say, well, I'm the analyst or I'm the engineer, so I know what's best. You really need to develop that active listening and understand what the customer wants. And then once you understand that, then you have a much better concept around how to frame all of your follow-on opportunities. And plus, it's just good to get that kind of business experience and be able to marry that and tie that with all of the awesome technical capabilities and skills that you have to offer.
Great tips. Thanks, Paul. I'm really glad that you're back with us. Although, honestly, if you can go back and watch the recording, it may not be TikTok, but there may be a future for you on a social media platform. Very catchy loopback.
I prefer MySpace.
It's true. The farther you progress in the management channels, those business skills become more and more important. Let's see, Justin, how about your thoughts on this as we move towards our wrap up here?
I just definitely want to reiterate that point of take every opportunity that comes available to you. You have no idea what you're going to learn or how useful that may be to you in the future. And trust me, you will be digging deep sometimes to see how things apply. Also understand that cybersecurity at the end of the day is about reducing risk. And most of the time that's reducing risk to businesses, that's reducing risks to the government, that's reducing risks all around. I'm also a little biased here, I'm going to be honest, that managed service providers, once again, check them out. It's a great way to get to that entry level experience. Everybody says, I don't have experience. How am I going to get experience? Well, there's a shortage of experience at certain levels and certain industries. So get that experience, learn everything you can, never turn down an opportunity, and really get a feeling for how business works and really how cybersecurity fits into that overall risk reduction strategies.
Thanks, Justin. Really appreciate that. And I would like to reiterate too, often I talk to cybersecurity professionals and I like to ask the question, what is your objective? And invariably the CIA triad comes up: confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Great. But what your real objective is, and you just touched on it, it's to help ensure the viability of the business. Because if the business fails, we're not getting a paycheck. And so maintaining that perspective is so helpful. Now, Jalene, you revealed that you're still in your first role in cybersecurity. I hope you've been taking great notes from all the tips from our panelists. Do you have anything to add before I toss it back to Rebecca?
I would add, I would just reiterate that taking initiative, keep developing your skills, even if you're not in a role that's using particular skills, don't get complacent. Push yourself to keep growing and to keep developing professionally. One of my biggest things for my own program is, in my own personal development, is that I try not to get too comfortable, because once you're too comfortable, that's when you get complacent, that's when you think you know everything, that's when you stop trying, and that's when you become the risk, the liability. So always keep pushing yourself to learn more, to do better than what you did last time, to expand how you can contribute, the value you can bring, and just keep growing and pushing yourself.
That's great advice. Thank you so much. And thanks to each of you, our great panelists, for the information you shared with us, the tips that you've shared, the experiences that you had that you were willing to share with all of us. So immensely useful. And I hope everybody who was listening took a lot of great notes or go back and watch this again, because it's really, really great, valuable experience. For those who are not already WGU students or alumni, I encourage you to go to wgu.edu and check out our fantastic cybersecurity degree programs. There's a lot to offer. Oh, there they are on the screen. With that, Rebecca, I believe it's back to you.
Thank you so much, Paul, and Jalene, and Justin, and Rashawn. And also just a special shout out to Krista McKnight, who is behind the scenes, but she made all of the magic happen from a technology perspective. And special thanks to Dulcie Antonucci, who is our communications manager here in the Northeast region, where I serve as the regional vice president. What we've heard today are so many different pathways, just from the few people that you heard speak, and then the amazing things that people were putting in the chat. So many different pathways, but I heard some common threads, and that is to build yourself a strong base of skills, competencies, certifications that you can use, communication skills, listening to understand, written communication, verbal communication, networking, volunteering, exploring an internship, and learning more about some new initiatives that are, for example, the Cybersecurity Talent Initiative that Jalene talked about and shared a link in the chat. We will be sharing out the recording, and we'll also be sharing out the slides with resources. So I want to take a minute to share, if we could move to the next slide, a pretty new initiative that we're doing at WGU right now. It's called Building Bridges and Breaking Barriers for Women in Tech. We affectionately call it B to the fourth power, Women in Tech. And this is an initiative that is funded in part by Reboot Representation Tech Coalition. And that is an organization that is funded by large tech employers for the purposes of helping to diversify and strengthen the talent pipeline. And specifically, the Reboot Tech Coalition has a goal of doubling the number of Black, Latina, and Native American women graduating with IT degrees, baccalaureate degrees by 2025. Some of those graduates will come from WGU. They are an amazing organization that are funding programs at other universities as well. We call ours B4 Women in Tech, and our program provides scholarships, financial aid, mentoring, aspirational peers with alumni engaging with prospective students. To learn more about this for yourself or for someone that you care about that you think could benefit from this program, please look up the free webinar, We Can Do It, Why IT is a Great Career Choice for Women. It will be on November 9th at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Again, the link will be in the resources that we send out to all of those who registered for this event. But just put a pin in this for someone that you think could really benefit from this, either yourself or someone else. And then if we could move down to the next slide, please. Just a shout out for WGU Career Services. Bonnie Monteleone and the team, Bonnie's on the webinar this afternoon. They do everything from helping you build resume resources. The job board that they participate in called Handshake, go there and you can see employers that are hiring tech talent. And it's just what it sounds like. It's a handshake. It's putting together people that need talent with people who are looking for jobs. Tons and tons of other support from WGU Career Services as well. And the next slide, please. More resources that we'll be sharing out. So job boards, a wide variety of job boards, internships. Next slide, please. Apprenticeships and networking. So lots and lots of links that we'll be sharing out with you. We encourage you to explore all of these and really applaud you for joining us this afternoon, this evening, to get a sense of how to land that first cybersecurity job and how to advance in that career pathway. Finally, we'll have a survey link for all of the participants that will be sent out. We want to learn from you about what was valuable for you and what you'd like to hear from in the future. So please, when you get that link, participate in the survey to help us continue to bring conversations and information of value to you. Finally, on behalf of the Northeast region for Western Governors University and WGU writ large, we thank you all for joining us and really are grateful for you taking on the goal of a cybersecurity career. Thanks so much.